things. We're going over pre-workouts, but we're also looking at it from a lens, not just including the actual supplements, but from routines and different things that we can do. With that being said, what's up, everybody? I'm just getting live on Amazon here. Change your camera orientation. I got it. Let's get live. I'm actually experimenting with a different setup, so let me know how the audio sounds, as well as everything else, how it looks, sounds. We got a couple different pieces I've been tweaking and playing with. Save changes. And again, I'm excited to go over. We're going to tag in how all our LOF stuff fits into this, but really going over a pre-workout kind of routine, as well as pre-workout supplements and some of the foundational pieces around that. So by the end of this kind of breakdown, whether you're listening to the podcast version, you're watching the live, getting the replay, you're watching the shorts, you're going to be able to take away what your protocol can be before a workout, whether it's using supplements, whether it's using coffee, whether it's your music routine, your warm-up routine. We're going to kind of look at a variety of variables and actually rank them 1 through 10 as far as what's going to be your actual best return on investment and your best focus, and then where might be the lower end of it as well. And then also just some like foundational things that aren't necessarily like items, products, things like that, but just like habitual kind of focal points that will be important to look at. So with that being said, I actually wanted to share what inspired this. I always like to share that because a lot of times companies will send me products. And I'm like, oh, that's actually been an interesting talking point. And then I do some deep diving. All of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is actually backed by peer-reviewed studies and journals and meta-analysis. That's something I'm really big on. If you guys haven't figured that out in any of my content yet, I like to look at not only my anecdotal experience and perspective, but also what is the data and science backing. So that's what we're going to dive into. That's where we're at. Again, feel free to ask questions, whether you're on the live, you want to ask questions, or if you come and watch the replay, listen to the podcast, throw in the comments, let me know. I will gladly break down the insight where I can and where it makes sense. Number one, we're going to look at, again, overall, let's just define like the pre-workout kind of window that I'm going to be exploring, okay? And then we'll start to break things down from there. So number one, when we think about the pre-workout window, the very typical version of it is the hour before. We're going to expand that window a little bit. We're going to look at a couple of contributing factors. And again, just to like redefine and make sure we're on the same page, we're going to be exploring, again, the supplement side of it. We're going to look at other variables that contribute to energy and also your overall health, both on the mental and the physical side, on the things that you can do, which are going to include nutrition, hydration, even cognitive stimuli. And then also looking at when we break down, I think the big conversation is, hey, should I be taking a stim-oriented or stimulant-oriented pre-workout? And I have another one here from our like C4. These are the kind of like classic, typical ones. Or should I be using something that's a non-stim or that's not going to have a stimulant, caffeine, something like that in it? So that was the real original question I wanted to answer and make sure we define. But then it started to expand as I was diving into the research, looking at different data, getting different ideas, covering different talking points, started to look at, oh, there's way more that can contribute to our performance. So yes, we're going to look at the hour before your workout, but then we're going to expand it to even the 6 to 12 hours potentially before a workout and look at, okay, where is a stimulant-oriented supplement going to be beneficial and where is a non-stimulant supplement and kind of habit going to be beneficial. And with that being said, the first thing I want to break down, I think this might be an obvious one, but when we talk about stimulant, maybe let's just define that. We're using typically it's going to be caffeine. That's going to be our most readily and heavily used stimulant as far as a supplement goes. So caffeine. You can also see, again, different versions of where you're going to get the caffeine from, whether it's your actual powdered supplement, a pill. We have like gum. So our NeuroGum, there's some cognitive components to that, but also coffee. I'm actually drinking, if I'm being honest, this is decaf coffee, y'all, but I just like coffee and it's cold. I've got my protein. So we're going to even go on how you can use protein, things like that, and how it's going to impact your performance. And then ultimately looking at what are some of the things it's doing in our brain as far as the neurochemicals. Then we're going to also look at physiologically what's happening there. And again, breaking down the key takeaways of the actionables you can kind of go with that. One of the interesting things, I'm going to kind of save you a TLDR right off the bat, is one aspect that I really don't want you to sleep on, that I want you to really be mindful of, that I thought was really impactful. And maybe I'm biased to this, but in the ranking system, I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, the number one tool you can use is music. So, and that's actually, let me pause for a second. That's outside of nutrition and sleep. Okay. So outside of nutrition and sleep, the number one thing you can focus on and use as a tool is music. So I actually didn't go into the weeds of like what kind of tools you'll use when it comes to music, but specifically I wanted to share using music has a lot of data behind it on the impact it can have, not only from a dopamine perspective, from an actual overall arousal perspective for, again, our brain chemistry and stimulating the parts of our brain that are going to help from a muscular endurance, from an exertion standpoint, from a fatigue, like kind of, or combating fatigue. There's a variety of contributing factors. I thought it was really interesting that can impact that is worth to look at. So that's number one right off the bat. Now I'm going to save you on the opposite side of that. Number 10, we're going to talk about everything in between, is kinesiology tape or different versions of tape. Now, again, like these are all things can have their place, but I just wanted to show you the spectrum of it. We're going to dive everything in between. We've got things like electrolytes. Again, caffeine, creatine, our stimulant-oriented pre-workouts, our non-stimulant-oriented pre-workouts, magnesium, theanine, all these types of things. But before we go into that, I want to talk about the kind of, again, tier system here, how I approach these things. This is also what I've talked about in the past. There we go. Our habits. So tier one, our foundation of all of this is sleep. If you don't have sleep, all this stuff it can still be impactful, but like sleep is going to be your most impactful focal point and habit you're going to want to master. Another interesting one that hopefully is obvious is coming to our nutrition. Okay. Making sure you're feeding your body leading up to your workout. And this goes into a deeper question of, well, should I be working out fasted, not fasted? Couple of things related to that. That's maybe a different office hours, different topic. This is going to make a couple of assumptions. Okay. And the assumptions is you care about performance first and foremost. That's what this whole theme is about. Now, if you want to talk about, well, I want to maximize my body recomposition and fat loss, we can get into some nuances on what can influence that. But this is assuming you care about performance first and foremost. And ultimately, if you even care about your body recomposition, you should look at performance first, because if you perform well, your body's going to also change its composition. And then we're also going to look at some aspects around hydration. Okay. So with that being said, sleep first and foremost, and kind of thinking about sleep. One of the things I thought was I wanted to talk about related to sleep. And again, the order I'm going, this is not the ranking yet. I'm going to cover the ranking all the way at the end, 1 through 10 of these products. I'm just going to have to bust things out based on how they relate to some of the foundational pieces here. And with that being said, with the foundational pieces, we're going to again look at sleep. And one of the things I hear a lot of times is, Mike, I have a hard time sleeping. I have a hard time getting to sleep, having consistency with my sleep. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is using some even supplementation, some habitual support with sleep, whether you're going to use something like Nitral's Sleep and Restore. Now, here's the thing I would say with that. They have melatonin in this. I'm not a huge fan of using melatonin on a nightly, daily basis, but it can be helpful to reset your rhythm, especially if you've traveled, you're changing time zones, coming off a crazy schedule. Melatonin combined with magnesium. We also have, GABA in this. And I believe, they have lemon balm extract as well. Now, all these things don't necessarily need, but it can be impactful. Now, what I will say is they have vitamin B6 in this as well, which as it builds up in your system, we're going to talk about later, where B vitamins in general come into play from a pre-workout standpoint and the benefit. But being able to first think about the 12 hours prior, the 6 hours prior, maybe even 24 hours prior, depending on when you're working out, is going to be sleep. So making sure the goal is 7 to 9 hours of sleep. But an interesting study and a kind of athletic study that was done in a peer-reviewed journal was looking at basketball players specifically, but you can kind of extrapolate this out and apply it in different settings, was when they got an extra 2 hours of sleep, so they went from 8 hours of sleep to 10 hours of sleep, their performance increased. Now, I'm not saying everyone's even that's accessible. 10 hours probably sounds crazy for anyone that's a parent out there. I know that sounds crazy for me. I'm really shooting for like a strong 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. I take a lot of pride, and quite recently I've been like, if I look at even my data, like on the smartwatch, and we're going to talk about even where wearable devices and smartwatches can fall into a optimizing our performance and even part of our pre-workout routine. Looking at my sleep, yeah, last night I got just over 8 hours, score of 77 out of 100. And then if I look at my overall history, it's going to average just above probably 7 hours, give or take. Hope's been kind of sleeping pretty rough lately, so that's been tricky. But in general, over 7 hours of sleep has been my goal. Okay, so that's the first part of it, and things that'll support in that. Another aspect that we even take out, again, you don't have to have melatonin. We're also going to look at just magnesium by itself can be a great nervous system relaxer as far as to help you calm down and also help support your muscles. Now, you don't have to just take magnesium at night from a sleep perspective. Magnesium can be really impactful for actual pre-workout, like the hour before your workout. And honestly, this is where I like to be transparent with you guys. What I've done is I've done a lot of like digging. So I've pulled up some of this information. I have a kind of like a cheat sheet and a PDF that's going to give me some specific journals and some specific numbers around this that I want to share with everyone, so I'm not misrepresenting things. So again, being able to have it from a support in a sleep perspective is helpful. And then the other side of it is also prior to a workout from an electrolyte perspective and balancing out our fluids. And speaking of that, that's another piece that I want to talk about and that we get to look at when it comes to even the habits of it, right? We're talking about the habits, and I talked about sleep. The other piece we're going to look at is our hydration. And then we'll also talk about nutrition and food coming into it as well. Because another piece to the overall nutrition and hydration, we're going to look at two things. Hydration, just getting fluid in, but also having electrolyte balances. And that's where having, if you want to just go magnesium, but really like things like Element or Kepi's, another brand that I've worked with before from electrolyte packets that have your blend. So if you even look at Element, they're going to have a gram of sodium. You're going to have, from a potassium standpoint, 200 milligrams, 60 grams of magnesium, which we were talking about before. So being mindful of that electrolyte balance, or we're going to have 200 milligrams in our pills. So if you want to, again, this is about balancing and replacing while we're active and sweating, but to me, loading up ahead of time. So Element's a great option intra-workout, during your actual workout, or maybe right before, again, leading into that 15 minutes going into a workout. But I like magnesium the morning of, just as a staple supplement in the hours prior. And that's assuming you're working out in the morning. I tend to work out anywhere from 8 to 12 in those windows, depending on the day. If you're working out in the evening, you can still take all of these things. It's just a matter of shifting the window. The one thing I would say, going back into a timing perspective related to nutrition and hydration, is if you're working out in the evening, you have more time during the day to properly hydrate. And that's where having magnesium in the morning will have a little bit more time. And then you can wait to take your Element, potentially even intra workout, or you could sip on it throughout the day. But the Element component is really meant to be done intra workout. During your, especially like high intensity stuff like jujitsu, running, sports, Muay Thai, again, hard hit interval training, CrossFit style, like that's the Element's going to help, but you can sip on it as well. The other thing I would say though, going back to even from a food standpoint, that's where you want to make sure you get carbs in throughout the day. And again, I'm not going to go into the exact numbers and ratios. We can have a whole breakdown around that. That's where you have our app. You can kind of get different information, all of our different products, from our books to our coaching programs and things like that, talk about the exact ratios, but being able to load your carbs prior. So you have sugar available for your workouts. Multiple studies, many, many times over, meta-analysis have shown the best impact on performance when it comes to nutrition is having glycogen available for your workouts. You can go keto and you can do different things, but your overall, what they've seen in the meta-analysis from what I've reviewed from others doing this is you're not going to perform the same. If you care about performance, you're going to want to have some type of carbohydrate and glycogen prior. Now, what you do for that can vary. You can go anywhere from honey, can be a really simple one. I personally like honey, something like that simple, especially in the half hour to an hour before, because A, it's not processed. And we can get into why processing matters. It really doesn't necessarily, if you just care about getting into your system, it doesn't necessarily matter. You can have like gummies and all types of candies and things like that. Again, being mindful of how much you eat, but I care about from an inflammatory standpoint, from a nutrient density standpoint, and also like from my experience of working with like local honeys, it can help with different types of immune response dynamics. Another thing I personally like, because my body's a little bit more, personally, my body, the way I've seen it respond, I don't need as much on the carbohydrates or as many or as like sugar latent, because I can kind of perform in a lot of different environments, even fasting. It's not the best, but I even like sea moss gel. Like I'll do like, I treat this like jelly. So I'll do like maybe a peanut butter jelly and a little bit of honey. Like I do that even in a tournament, in jiu-jitsu style tournament, or if I'm going to a really heavy workout session or in between sessions, this can be helpful. But I found just doing like a tablespoon or two of this, getting a little bit of carbs, getting phytonutrients in, getting some more electrolytes coming in. That's a really helpful one as well when it comes to nutrition side and when it comes to the hydration side. So again, to recap that component of it, having your electrolytes, having in some simple carbohydrates, that's going to be a key component we can use tools and products around to set ourselves up from a pre-workout standpoint that we can again show has a statistic benefit on our performance. And again, if you guys are curious for the exact numbers and also references, when I repurpose this into a blog, or maybe you're watching this on the blog right now, you can get that information below. Wherever you're watching this, we're going to have a link to our blog. You can see the data. I have all the citations and references there. And if it's not up live yet, because you're watching this live, then make sure you're tuned in to this channel, and I'll share with you guys wherever you're watching this. You'll be able to have the notification when it's up, which will be in the next like 3 days, maybe 5. Every week we pump them back out. So that's our nutrition and our hydration component of it. Now let's talk about the next step or the next piece of it. So when we're looking at, again, we went sleep, hydration, and nutrition. Another part of it is now leading up to the actual supplementation side itself, right? So being able to say, okay, now I want to potentially, and this is what started all of this, was the pre-sticks workout, pre-sticks that I have from Clean Nutra. This company just sent me some free stuff, transparently. Again, they're not paying me to say anything in particular. I just like, cool, I want to like build something around this, because I think this could be a popular topic, and I dug into some trending things around it. So they have a combination of things. And the two things that I was really excited to see was creatine and caffeine, because those are the two most studied, scientifically supported, impactful ingredients when it comes to supplementation in general. Here's the one thing I will say that I got to give them a little bit of pushback on. One, I mean, they do great on the caffeine, 100 milligrams, pretty solid. Magnesium, 85 milligrams, pretty good. You can have more than element here. And there's a reason. There's a ratio why element and different types of things have the ratio of the electrolytes they do. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, they have different roles. One is what's called an intracellular. One is what's called an extracellular, pulling water in or out of your cell. And based on that, you will have different ratios and proportions. So that's just an aspect to keep in mind. They calculate that. But again, you wouldn't necessarily take this for the magnesium itself. You would take like a separate, because again, the Nesta Naturals version of it has 200 milligrams. And that's closer to what you want to see as like a modest effective dose from a, if you're taking it at night for sleep, which you're not doing a pre-workout, but if you're taking it as a supplement before your workout to help from a muscular endurance, from a nerve response, from an electrolyte perspective, that's where you're going to want to see it. The other part is, for the creatine piece of it, this has creatine in too, which is why I wanted creatine and caffeine, but it's a part of a proprietary blend, which is fancy for saying they don't have to tell you how much of what is in it. So it has beta-alanine, that's another one we're going to get into and why that may or may not be beneficial for you. Citrulline, another one, arginine, and creatine. These are some of the ones that caught my eye, but they're saying all of these total are 500 milligrams, but you don't know how much creatine in it. And it's honestly, from a creatine standpoint, and I also have my other versions of creatine you can get in, whether it's from gummies or from the powder itself, you're going to want to usually get in like 3 to 5 grams at a bare minimum, upwards of potentially 10 grams. And that's in the early part of the day. And then same thing in the second half of the day. Even what I found effective when I've talked to others in this space and consumed others' information, they'll talk about having like 5 to 10 grams as a serving in the first half of your day, 5 to 10 grams as a second serving in the second half of your day. And the benefit to that, or even the reason you may want to do that, is because from a digestion standpoint. Okay, if you have too much creatine, again, you can have some rough GI, like some diarrhea. You just may not feel great on your system. So being mindful of how your body responds. If it doesn't have any issues, take it all in one shot. I know for me, if I do more than like 10 grams at a time, I'm just going to have a rough time. So that's where I kind of cap it. With that being said, it doesn't take anything away from like, cool, a little bit of creatine would be helpful, but it's not enough from what I've seen to really be used as a pure creatine source or supplementation. You're going to want to take creatine in addition to this. The caffeine will do it. The beta alanine, also another great option here as well. And when we think about caffeine, again, from a stimulant perspective, it's going to help from a neuro response perspective. It's going to help from your overall alertness and output. The second piece to going to the creatine, it's going to help from what's called ATP utilization and production, both in the brain and muscularly. So that's our main source of energy. The first like 5 seconds of a workout or any kind of exertion is coming from ATP. After about 15 seconds, we're going to other energy systems, our glycolytic system, which is why sugar and glycogen is so important. Most of our workouts don't go more than like for a set 1 minute, maybe 2. And that's really getting crazy. If you're doing muscular endurance type stuff, that's where we may want to even then get into like beta alanine can be beneficial from a muscular endurance, from a repeat effort. It's not even just for cardio, like endurance athletes, I think from what I've seen on the data are going to benefit the most from beta alanine. Also, here's the trick that I see most supplement companies using beta alanine for, whether it's this or other pre-workouts, even like C4, things like that, or even non-stim oriented, like Gorilla Mind. I have in the carousel and some other ones related to like PES science. Being able to use it from a tingles perspective. So you're going to get some tingles that gives you a psychological, like, oh, this is working. It's doing something. I mean, beta alanine has its value. And when you take it, but it's one serving isn't going to do it. It's like, it has to build up in your system. So you may want to take it for days and weeks before you really start to see the impact over time. But if you're taking it every time you work out, then over like a week or two, you'll see a benefit from that. So I think that's an important piece to keep in mind. And in general, when it comes to all the supplementation stuff, like, these are the nice to haves. You don't need any of this stuff, to be honest. It's just the nice to haves to optimize performance, the last little 10, 20%. That's why I even put music first, because that's like going to outperform almost all this stuff. We'll get into some of the other things as well. So we talked about even the electrolyte side. Electrolytes, so even as little as 1% dehydration can impact your cognitive performance. And then you go past 3% dehydration, you're getting your electrolytes imbalance, can impact your endurance, your strength, your power output, all of those things, especially in potentially high heat environments. So if you're training in a gym or in a location that you're sweating a lot, whether it's in the gi maybe, or maybe in like Florida or the South or something like that, you're going to want to be mindful of your sweat and your body temperature regulation. Okay. Now, another piece that we're going to look at from a supplementation standpoint that came up was B vitamins. Okay. So I have some examples of that. And also I want to share, when it comes to the magnesium, you can take it in a powder, you can take it in a pill, you can also take it in a dropper. I find the sublingual, the dropper, to be the most bioavailable and absorbable. Same thing from B vitamins. You can take it in a pill, you can take it in a powder, you can take it in the sublingual or like dropper style. That's what I do for this B12. Being able to have it, it's got 500 units being able to take in, which is like 200,000 times, or 208,000 times the daily value. But sometimes when you hear stuff like that, like it depends on what the product is. B vitamin can be beneficial for that kind of dosage, but the consistency of it as well. And you can, again, get all of this from your food. Now, the dosages you may want may not be possible from certain foods. So that's why it's being impactful on how you supplement it. But a B vitamin is worth it as far as even what the data is going to show, and related to not only a stress response, to being able to have energetically from a metabolic standpoint, being able to have a mindfulness of like when you're, let's say, body recompositioning and you're like lowering your caloric intake, B vitamins can kind of potentially struggle from that. And a lot of nutrients can potentially struggle depending on what you're eating. So being mindful of like what's going to impact your performance. B vitamins and B complex vitamins, B3, B6, B12, being able to impact that. So even this B complex has thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, B6, folate, which I believe is B3, B12, and biotin. So being able to have all those things kind of put together in one spot and in one capsule can be great. But from a pure performance, here's what I've seen the most impact is like B12 from this dosage and the absorption bioavailability. That's been, I literally just stick to this one, honestly, on a daily basis, especially before my workout. And timing for this can be impactful. But when I say timing, more specifically, yes, pre-workout, but timing of the day. So if we think about these, and I'll go over this at the end, if you're working out in the morning versus the evening, how does that change any of this? Another one that I thought was kind of interesting was the greens moringa, the organic moringa, which honestly hasn't been on my radar up until the last couple of months. This was one that I honestly was sent, and a company reached out to me, believe it or not, on TikTok and Amazon. They're on both the platforms. And like, hey, we want you to try this. I was like, cool, I'll try it. And from looking it up and checking it out, it basically categorizes as like Mother Nature's multivitamin. Now it's still missing some basic, again, vitamins and minerals, but it has quite a bit of value from it and can be a great complement. Plus, the cool thing, it has amino acids built into it, as well as some omega-3 and some fiber, which I thought it's covering like a wide spectrum. So even from a value perspective, that one can hit a lot of marks and just be something that you add again on a daily, not just as from a workout performance reason, but just from overall quality of life. And that's what I like when I'm ranking a lot of these. It's yes, it's impact acutely, but also over time, like over long term. We're recommending. Oh, I see you. Okay, so TikTok's like, hey, you're like trying to read. I'm just telling you guys where the stuff's coming from. Relax. So the point is being able to utilize and how I'm categorizing these things. And moringa is one of those things that's like, it wouldn't even be my top 3 from a pure pre-workout performance, but overall quality of life performance. We'll get into like, again, where this is going to rank over all these like pre-workout performance type things. So we covered our music, we covered creatine, we covered caffeine, we covered electrolytes, we covered magnesium, we covered B vitamins, we covered moringa. We got 3 more to go. I actually even slightly touched on KT or kinesio tape or KT tape. And also here's some of the things we're going to touch on, which is resistance bands, the LOF bands. So using our short and long loop bands from a warm-up perspective. We're going to also cover how we can use a physio ball, which I have right over here. Let me grab and show you. I'm actually going to sit on the ball for the rest of this time while we're going through it. So we got a physio ball, how we're going to use this from a pre kind of warm-up workout perspective, as well as an activation perspective. And then finally, our KT tape or our kinesio tape. Okay. And how this is going to impact performance and how we may use it pre-workout to utilize those things and where they might rank. So first, let's go back to our bands. So here's some fun data points or some fun insight I want to share with you guys. So when it comes to, and how I kind of categorize, so follow my like thought process on this. How I got here was, again, pre-workout, before the actual intense workout. What are things we go? So even defining the hour before, 15 minutes before, once the workout starts, even they're still like before the heavy sets start. So our warm-up itself is part of that. Dynamic stretching, dynamic resistance stretching falls in that category. And then even warm-up sets before we do our heavy working sets. So that's how I got into the band component and the ball component and some of the related aspects to that. So when it comes to the bands, studies will show that when you're using dynamic stretching, that's going to help boost performance anywhere from 3 to 5+% versus static stretching has shown on meta-analysis a decrease in strength and power output by potentially anywhere 3 or more %. And we're talking about these percentages. When you start getting into training, think about if you were to go up 5% on your max deadlift, which is, let's say, simple math, 200-pound max deadlift, that's 10 pounds. So being able to do 10 pounds more, 10 pounds less can be your new PR. That's impactful, especially over time and over volume. It may not feel that way when you just hear the number, but when you think about how it applies, it becomes important. Especially, again, going back to the performance idea. And even from a non-performance idea, if you want to build muscle, if you could do 10% more weight, you can start to tear and damage the muscle acutely so it can grow back bigger and stronger and become more aesthetically pleasing, and then also simultaneously burn more calories, helps your body composition, all of those fun pieces. And again, not only being able to prime the tissue, warming it, having more range of motion from a nervous system, having joint integrity, but also being able to have it even as a facilitator in priming your nervous system. So not only the muscular system, but your nervous system as well, and be able to have fast twitch response times and different things like that. So some of the key things that have been associated when it comes to increasing is your bench, your row, being able to deadlift, being able to squat, some of the big movements. Using bands as part of the warm-up is going to be impactful. And then I'm probably going to go into a part 2 if you guys want to see that. I was even thinking if we have time and you guys want to hang around, I'll demonstrate some of the movements that can be impactful, whether it's external rotations, band pull-aparts, face pulls, like high face pulls, being able to do lateral steps with our short loop bands. So activating up the hip complex, our glutes, our abductors, adductors, things like that, and being able to go some of the other components around it. Banded dislocates and around the worlds, as I like to call them. I've seen others call them. So all these pieces become impactful when it comes to the bands. And to piggyback on that, now with the ball component, being able to use the ball, one of the data points I'll share with you is an increase of core activation from anywhere of 20 to 40% when you're using the ball. So being mindful of that and being mindful of that activation becomes important for when, again, you want to get the most out of your lifts and being able to get the most out of your workouts. So you want to get more core activation. You're going to be able to lift more, be able to push more, get more from that. All right. So that's like kind of a combination from the bands as well as the ball. And then lastly, from a KT tape, kinesio is just like being able to, just from a pure simple reason, getting blood circulation to wherever you're applying this. So if you create some superficial stimulation on the tissue, you get some more blood flow, which can help from a performance standpoint, but also from a recovery standpoint. The other piece, and there's different studies or different components we can quote from studies that, again, is outside my scope a little bit. Again, I'm not a PT, so I have worked with PTs in corrective exercise and things like that, where being able to use it to, again, help match and this is where you want to use a good either PT or functional trainer, athletic trainer has a specialty in this where you can start to match and you can cut. If you see these are like cut in 12-inch little strips, you can cut to match, whether it's like, let's say my pec, right? So I can start where the tissue originates and then inserts on and support that tissue. Again, when I say support, it's not going to like allow you to lift crazy numbers, but just to help from that actual muscular standpoint, bringing blood flow to that area and being able to dive into a couple other benefits, which I think is really interesting. And also, even if it's a placebo effect, like having an increase in your performance, if it even helps from a psychological standpoint, that can be impactful as well, which I've seen kind of both. I've seen data support placebo aspects of increase as well as actual performance benefit outside of a control group. All right, let's pause for a second, see if we got any questions from the live side. All right. Who's blowing up the YouTube comments? Yeah. Don't even know what you're saying there, but cool. Appreciate the comments at least. Now we kind of covered all the pieces. I'll see if you guys got questions, and now we're going to rank this. Okay. So we're going to dive into some ranking around it and see what, oh, hold on. Way even more. Oh, there's, okay. Right. So we got all these different pieces, okay? We've got our 10 kind of key areas from a performance standpoint. Now, actually, the one thing I'm going to highlight a couple of others that don't even fall in the top 10, but that can be impactful, right? And one I wanted to share was beets. And this is what I would recommend is eating actual beets. Like having a beet salad can be way more impactful than the potentially supplement. You can get it maybe more refined down. And that's also a great source of carbs while simultaneously getting the nitric oxide vasodilator benefit of it. But you can also get it in a powder. If I like food whenever possible, like I would invite using food versus just being able to take a powder or supplement. But again, for convenience reasons, I understand why you might want to do that. The other piece to that is being able to, again, similar to like almost a creatine side of it, getting the vasodilation. Now, the only difference is it won't have the same impact, but it can be another option that you utilize that has some data and some support to it. Another piece that this is, again, these are like more of like, I would say, again, since they're not in the top 10, that's for a reason, but things you can look at if you just want to like play with things to spend your money on, experiment with, like as I drop it, Normatim has a lithium supplement. Now, this was something I've seen for like ADHD and cognitive function. And again, to me, this is like a tier 3, like you really got to be nailing your foundational habits. You really got to be nailing your core supplements and routines. Then if you want to spend extra money on like fun things just to see, this would be one of those things. This is something I wouldn't recommend if you're not nailing all these other pieces. You only have like a budget for one thing. This is like extra on top kind of interesting pieces to experiment with, as thiamine and B6 along with the lithium, which all are also going to complement your performance from a workout standpoint. That's pretty much it from that. The only thing, actually, I have a couple of other that I'll just throw in there from a comparison, like green coffee bean extract with green tea. Can still somewhat be categorized as a stimulant. Again, I would not compare it to even coffee. Coffee would be like my hands down, like the things that I personally, and this now we'll get into the rankings, personally I stick to is like coffee for the caffeine, creatine in 5 to 10 gram, maybe more doses, and maybe my B12. Those are like my pre-workout kind of routines. If you want to go non-stimulant oriented ones, you pull the coffee out, you do your B12, you can do your creatine, you can even do beta alanine for depending on your performance reasons and some other aspects around that. And that's pretty much it. But if you want to like swap and you're like, hey, I don't want coffee for whatever reason, you can try this. It'll have an impact from a metabolic standpoint, from an energetic standpoint. It can be impactful, but it wouldn't be, it's not even in the top 10. So we've kind of covered all the products that I wanted to go over and the tools related to it. But to me, the number one thing, and again, I'll go back to the ranking piece, the number one thing you can leverage is music. Like it's performance-wise going to be the most impactful. From a brain chemistry perspective, from a dopamine and a, like serotonin, mood regulation, reward mechanism, and also your just ability to exert and overcome, music's going to be the best thing you're going to leverage. Like the strongest tool you can use before a workout, getting in the right mind space, and even during your workout, leveraging music. Now, I like my fiance, for example, Carrie, she doesn't listen to music during her workout. You could totally do that too. You don't have to become reliant on music, especially if you're doing it based for performance reasons and you're like a fighter, for example, or any type of athlete. You're not going to necessarily have music during the game or during your performance. But if you want to get the most out of your workouts and your trainings, leverage music. It's again, and if you want to see the like citations and data on that, you can go to the blog when it's up or just click the links below. You'll kind of see that data. So that's number one. Number two is creatine. Again, for both the brain and the body, from a cognitive standpoint and from a physical performance and energetic standpoint, repeat efforts, that's what puts it as number two. It's one of the most backed products and tools that you can leverage. Number three, caffeine. Again, from alertness, from an output standpoint. Now, here's the caveat. When it comes to caffeine, this is the only one you want to be mindful of from a timing perspective. This is one you do in the morning and maybe the afternoon. But once you get past 2 o'clock, this is not a good return on investment. Okay. And what I mean by that is it's going to impact your sleep quality. Everyone's different here. Everyone can say like, oh, I might not be as sensitive, but I would recommend not having it. Because think about it. Caffeine can have a half-life. So it's half of it will stay in your system for up to 12 to 24 hours. And so if we take, let's say, a cup of coffee or my pre-workout sticks, 100 milligrams, that means 50 milligrams still going to be in my system 12 hours later. So I don't want 50 milligrams or more in my system past midnight. It's not going to be impactful. So for me, I cut off my caffeine intake around lunch, like 1 o'clock is the latest I'll do it. At one point I used to push it to 4 and I still somehow get to sleep, but I noticed my sleep quality tanked pretty hard. So when it comes to caffeine, be mindful that it's going to have a half-life of up to 12 hours, anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. So you want to be mindful of how you time that. If you're working on the evenings, you don't want to lean on even like caffeine-oriented, stimulant-oriented, or coffee-type-oriented pre-workouts right before. You could take it maybe earlier in the day just to give you some energy throughout your day, but it's not even going to last you to your workout. So that's just something to keep in mind. That's number three. Number four actually is going to be resistance bands, like our LOF bands, for example. We have our whole pack. And again, you don't have to even use it, but I'm obviously biased. So we have a whole training system that comes with that, our app, our meal planning, coaching support. You get all that when you buy our LOF training system and bands. But short loop, long loop bands, when you use them in your dynamic stretching routine and your warm-up routine, it's going to increase your overall performance and output. So that's why it's at number 4. Number 5, using electrolytes. Now, I put it at 5 just because like electrolytes can be extremely impactful, but I'm talking about as a supplement and for your pre-workout. That's why we're looking at what does the data show? What does the impact show? If you're properly eating from a nutritional standpoint throughout your day, you may not necessarily need extra supplementation before your workout. Intra-workout, this can also potentially be impactful, but even from the data I've seen, the bands are going to have more weight from what you get out of your workout, especially if you're properly hydrating throughout the day and eating proper food balances and you're supplementing with other things throughout your normal routine. That's why we put electrolytes at number 5. Then number 6, we have magnesium, which is going to be great again from a pre-workout standpoint, from your muscular system, and from a balancing electrolytes. That's why it's right after just your core group of electrolytes, but also from a recovery and calm standpoint, later in the day, in the evening before bed, you can lean on your magnesium, or magnesium like kind of blended with melatonin and those types of things to help with your sleep quality. Then number 7, we have our B vitamin complex. Now, I would even maybe propose repositioning this if it was just purely B12. And if you're not taking caffeine, this could maybe slide up a couple spots. But overall, from a B vitamin standpoint, we're going to put them at number 7 from an energetic and metabolic function standpoint. And especially if you're like burnt out, you're not getting proper sleep, you're not getting good nutrition, this is going to be impactful for you. Then we have number 8. We're going with our moringa, or you could even swap this for honestly a multivitamin. Like either one of those you could take before your workout will be impactful for you. And hopefully that's something you're taking on a daily basis anyway. And that's why, like, for my top 5 in supplements, either moringa or like a multivitamin or a greens product is like a core I'd recommend everybody take no matter what. But then when we put it in the specific context of performance enhancement right before a workout, it's still in the top 10, but it's not in the top 5. So that's why we got it at number 8. Even from a micronutrient overall density perspective, not just our vitamins, but minerals, antioxidants, and overall nutrients, it's got over 90 nutrients in general in it. Then we have number 9, where we have our physio ball. So again, talking about similar to the bands, using it for core activation, using it for priming your tissue from your system, and being able to have that continuous integration into your chain, it's going to enhance your performance and overall just like quality of life even throughout the day. And then lastly, our KT tape or kinesio tape. Out of all those things, it can still have some data and backing in the performance, but it's of all of these going to be like the least impactful and prioritized. So number 1, use music. So the biggest takeaways I would invite is music, creatine, caffeine. Those are the 3 things that if you can leverage those, whether you want to get it from gum, again, you want to get it from coffee, your pre-workout powders, all of that. Like really the most beneficial thing I've seen from any pre-workout is if you're using a stimulant one, is the caffeine. Yes, a little bit of beta alanine. Yes, there's some other things in there that can be helpful, but really it's the creatine and caffeine that's doing it for you. And if you're going no caffeine, no stimulant oriented, creatine, B vitamins, music, water, electrolytes, you're good to go. And then obviously throwing in the bands from your warm up perspective, that should be across the board, whether stimulant or non-stimulant. And there we are. And that's kind of going to bring it home as far as, again, our pre-workout impacts, tools, products that we can look at, and what brings value. And I'm going to pause to see if we have any questions for the live part of it. And again, if you guys are watching the replay or anything like that, you can check below, check the blog, make sure you're following. I appreciate y'all. We'll be back. I'm pretty much going to be live streaming again on almost a daily basis at this point. You'll catch us on TikTok and on Amazon for the most part, doing my lives when I'm doing body doubling sessions. That's either workouts, meal prep, or like journaling type things. We always going to have our office hours on a Sunday. I've been playing with the times to see, hey, when do we get the best response? And it looks like, 8:15 is good, but like honestly, sleep was rough last night, if I'm being honest with you guys. So that's why we kind of positioned it to having it here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in, catching the fun. I will be back most likely tomorrow. And again, if you haven't already, please make sure you're following, subscribing, liking. Love hearing from you guys. And that is pretty much going to do it. Cheers, everybody. I'm going to go tag in with Baby Hope. Bye, y'all.